Toronto FC outlasted League One Quebec side CS Saint-Laurent 3-0. They ended up defeating them, all those 3 goals coming in the second half. So kudos to Saint-Laurent, though, holding an MLS side goalless in the first 45. And then on Tuesday, Cavalry FC lost to Vancouver Whitecaps 2-1. And CF Montreal and Forge played to a 1-1 draw in Hamilton. So just one big question for each of the opening legs here. I guess, Wheels, I'll start with you. Forge or CF Montreal, who do you think is feeling better after leg 1?
I think both teams are feeling okay. I think that by the result, CF Montreal might edge it a little bit more, being confident that they're going to be going home, playing at Stade Saputo for the second leg. They got the away goal as well. So Forge has had all kinds of problems playing away at Montreal in this competition throughout it. So in that sense, they feel good. But in terms of the way that they played on the field, I think that Forge is feeling pretty good about themselves as well, because I think they proved that they're a better version of themselves in this competition. It might be a better team than CF Montreal has ever played before. They outplayed CF Montreal in the first half of that game, and it took, a triple halftime change by Laurent Courtois really to get a grips of what was going on in this game. And then through it all, Noah Jansen could have had a goal right on the 90th minute if it wasn't for a phenomenal save from Sebastian Breza. So I honestly think that both teams are feeling good. Both teams are going to feel like they have a better chance to win it. But based upon the score and the away goal, I think that CF Montreal will just edge that one.
How are you feeling, Jordo?
I think CF Montreal are feeling better because I thought Forge were the better side and could have scored more goals. Also, probably the only thing I'll add to Wheels is that in the first 16 seconds, there could have been a pen. Rewatching and watching it over, I think Jordan Hamilton's in on Waterman. And what would have happened with that pen as well is that if you're going by the rule, that would be a red card for Waterman being the last man. So that would have put them in a different position. But when you just feel the vibe of the atmosphere, and it seemed like kids from everywhere were there on that day screaming, the high-pitched voice, the soprano was definitely moving that day. But do you feel like the environment that Forge did enough to maybe score 2 or 3? They really, not the whole match, but in parts of the match, they took it to CF Montreal. So I feel like CF Montreal have to feel good knowing that they kind of dodged the bullet. It's 1-1, and they're going to play at home in a little bit. So this Forge side was good. On a different day, maybe they would have a deficit, and maybe there'd be an uphill battle for CF Montreal to climb, but that just wasn't in. They were good enough to tie it that day, but Forge just didn't really put them in a position and kill them off heading into this next leg.
It's always a little frustrating. Obviously that was inside even like the first 20 seconds where I think a lot of us felt like, could they be awarded a pen? But I find refs, Ollie, they're just hesitant. Like they're hesitant that early in a match to do it, but that's not necessarily fair.
Yeah, that was it. I think it was just the timing of it being so early in the game. It should have been a penalty. I don't think there was any question about it. So Forge,
I don't think it was a penalty.
You don't think anything's a penalty?
I think you're wrong.
Days.
It was too far. I don't think Jordan Hamilton was getting to that ball. So, anyways, carry on. So it's not obvious. Not everyone thinks that, but go ahead. Continue.
Not everyone thinks it, but it should have been a pen. This one should have been.
I agree.
That's okay.
Anyway, I think the question doesn't actually specify who's feeling better about leg 2. It just says who's feeling better. I think that has to be Forge, because CF Montreal's sporting director has just quit, and he did it apparently on game day. So this club, which seems to have a bit of a tendency to not be able to avoid these types of situations, this isn't the first time we've seen something like this in Montreal, is now dealing with another setback of losing someone who I think has been a massive figure in that club over the past few years. And Olivier Renard's, I think the thing about him was that when there have been issues with, Joey Saputo fell out with Wilfred Nancy, there's been different issues over the past few years. Olivier Renard's been someone who's been, I think, a source of stability and has not only kind of coped with that environment, but he's actively endorsed it at times, the model that they work under, and he succeeded under that model. That's been a competitive team, even if maybe not as competitive as Montreal fans would ideally like, over the past few seasons, with a lot of players going to higher levels. So this is something where, again, when you see Wilfred Nancy walk away, apparently for similar reasons due to tension with the owner 2 seasons ago, now you see the sporting director reportedly doing the same thing. Is this going to be a cue for a bit of a rethink about how they operate that club, or are they just going to continue with the status quo? Because yet again, they find themselves in a tough situation in Montreal.
Yeah, but I mean, the players play. Saputo also oversees Bologna, who have done exceptionally well this year. This personality, this persona is the one that owns the team, and if you're not in line with that owner, it's not the first owner in professional sports that operates in a certain way. So yes, it's not good when you lose very talented people like that. But the club is a reflection of the owner, and I'm not justifying it, but it brings great success.
Right.
The team has done really well, and they've gone on and actually arguably hired better people along the way. Like when they've lost individuals, they've gone on and actually improved both in Bologna and CF Montreal. So we'll see how it all plays out.
That's fine, but if Joey Saputo wants to have a role in decision making, then he should make himself the GM. He can do that. He's the owner. You can't just kind of wade in every now and then. It's reportedly about this Matthew Chouanier contract and have an opinion on something that seems pretty innocuous, to be honest. Paying a homegrown all-star to stay at the club and sign a new contract, like that, that's not going to work in terms of how you run a club.
But I'm not agreeing. I'm not defending it, but like president's medal, owner's medal. There's a lot of people that are involved in various decision makings for every club. So you need to understand the conditions when you enter. So I'm not justifying any of this, but this shouldn't surprise anyone, should it?
No, well, I think what stands out, Wheels, is that it's been for the last few years now with CF Montreal. Like this is not just this year. This is happening between Matthew Chouanier and Olivier Renard. We've heard this before last year with players complaining. We've seen former employees take to Twitter and complain about things over there. Like it just seems to be the last few years off the pitch, things are not right. Things aren't going well with CF Montreal. But to your point, in spite of things, they're at least getting the job done to an extent on the pitch. Let's turn around now to Cavalry and Vancouver Whitecaps. Are you, Jordan, disappointed in Cavalry or impressed by the Whitecaps road win?
I'm very disappointed in Cavalry. I've been bigging them up. I've been really high on this team. I thought that they've bolstered and they have a squad that could definitely compete with the MLS side. But more importantly, I think it was the atmosphere, right? Going into a match, you're playing Vancouver Whitecaps, who for me are the favorites to win this tournament. I think a lot of people feel that way. You're playing them at home. You've had the best record at home in the CPL. This is a fortress. Even when I've played on that field, you can feel it. The fans playing on grass, all of that. And it felt like the first kick of the ball was played, and there's that one little pass from Daly over the top to Camargo, and you're like, oh, there's some vibes. After that, flat. Like it was a bit tentative, nervous. I was like, this is the moment. You guys are prepared for this. You just played in a CPL final, like big moments. And I think that match and it happens sometimes. Players just felt like they kind of went like this and were just inside of themselves a little bit. I was expecting just a bit more bravado, a bit more life from that team because I feel like they're prepared to do it. They had the squad to do it. So it's not done. You still got to go to BC and get a result, but it just felt like a missed opportunity seeing that match. I'm not going to take anything away from Levante and the goals that he scored, and Whitecaps the way that they played. But I was just expecting more of a fight, more Hail Marys thrown, more uppercuts from Cavalry, and it just wasn't there on the day. So this has to sting a little bit. At least it does for me.
How are you feeling, Ollie?
I didn't think the Whitecaps were great, or certainly not at their best, but they did a professional enough job and found a couple of goals. I also didn't think Cavalry were that bad, to be honest with you. Was it their absolute best? No, but I thought they were competitive against an MLS side. This is unfortunate, just a moment of absolute quality from Levante Johnson to break the deadlock, and that obviously plays a massive part in the game. I just feel with Cavalry right now, they seem to me to be a bit short in attack. Obviously, Maya Bevan, I think that loss has been felt, and the way it came at kind of quite suddenly and at short notice has been difficult to replace. So I think you've got to watch over the next few weeks. Can Malcolm Shaw, great goal there, come into more of a role? Lucas Diaz with the assist, can he continue to grow and play a bigger role than he has to start this season? Leighton Brooks is another one. Willie Akio, I don't think is anywhere near his best right now. They need to get him back in form. Can we see those players start to take on more responsibility and a bigger role, or is Tommy Wooden Jr. going to need to potentially look at recruiting in the summer and improving his squad? Because right now, especially obviously with Musi out, it just felt to me like there was a big, heavy reliance on Camargo and Moshevsky to produce.
Wheels?
Yeah, I just To Ollie's point, I think they lack that number 9, that player that can play in behind. I think it worked defensively the way they set up with Camargo playing through the middle, but they needed someone to be able to press in behind that back line. Oftentimes it was Brooks and Reshevsky down the wing after defending deep. They were then forced to get up. There was an imbalance in attack. In that first half, the way that it played out, it was ugly. It was ugly football by both sides, partially by design, and that kind of worked for Cavalry. But I mean, the 2 goals that Vancouver scored on the day were a complete punch down the field, just a long, like an aimless long ball played forward, and then somehow a mistake or a beneficial bounce went their way, and then 2 really good goals by Levante Johnson. That's it. Bob's your uncle, 2-1. Like, just the way that those goals were scored, Tommy will not love that. And I think that they could have been in a much better position. This game, the way it played out for me, kind of had draw written all over it. So the fact that you're down a goal going to BC Place, they need to go there and score at least 2 like you did in 2019 to go on in advance. They put themselves in a hole. And to Ollie's point, maybe it just comes down to the fact they're a little bit short in that number 9 area.
Well, speaking of a draw, that is exactly what we saw between Pacific and Atletico Ottawa last night. Pacific parking the bus, and James Merriman, post-game guys, pretty much admitted, he's like, yeah, whatever. In Ottawa on the road, job done. We'll go home and finish it off. They have confidence that they can win this out at home when they host Atletico in the second leg. But who do you think is actually better positioned to beat an MLS side, Jordan?
This one was tough for me to think about, but I decided to go with Pacific just based on the fact that the way that they're defending. I also think too, if you're going to go and play an MLS side, are you really trying to hold them to 0 at home or away or whatever it might be? That's obviously a tough feat. But in terms of the way that they're defending and the way that they're committed so early in the season to just keeping that 0 and holding it to 0, and the way that they have Cedric Toussaint kind of protecting in the midfield, and they have Endam and Thomas Mia-Jaguar that are just playing well. Even the keeper, whether it's Melvin or whether it's Gazdoff, like they just seem to be in sync. I think that's a recipe that you can live with. Obviously, the contrast of it is, can you go and be a threat? The match last night, I didn't see much of a threat going forward. I think Saluf is a big loss in terms of the creativity that he brings. And you need him healthy, or you need him playing from the start of the match, I think, with this side. But if there's a team they're going to go up against, I think Pacific could, their recipe, they could hold their weight in that regard against a better side.
Okay. How are you feeling about it, Wheels?
I'm kind of taking the opposite approach. I think it's Atletico Ottawa who are more prepared or in a better spot to go on and play an MLS side, because you can't defend the way that Pacific did in that game by essentially parking the bus for 90 minutes and just making things, rough and tumble. You can't do that against an MLS side. MLS sides of these qualities, you're going to get punished. I just think that Atletico Ottawa right now is a little bit more bite to them, don't they? I think that if Carlos Gonzalez maybe doesn't make the couple changes that he made ahead of this game, giving Sammy Salter a start, having Tabla come off the bench, if he plays his best 11, I think that's a team that could really cause some problems for an MLS side. And Pacific, I think they're doing really well. They're showing that they can play in different ways. But right now, just in terms of where they're at this stage of the season, you have to tip your cap to Atletico Ottawa. They're a step ahead for me.
All right. Well, we know one of these teams is going to the semifinal. Atletico Ottawa, Ollie's going to be looking to go there for the very first time. Pacific has been there before. So who do you think's better equipped?
I'm with Wheels on this one. I just think over 180 minutes, you need to be able to have a bit more of a say in the game. You need to be able to play in transition and offer that kind of threat. And I just see a bit more of that with Atletico Ottawa right now. Pacific obviously have been fantastic defensively, and we'll see if they can continue to work into the season in the CPL in terms of the other side of their game. But I think Atletico Ottawa is the more complete team right now.
All right, guys, we know Vanni Sartini. He drew the line in the sand a couple weeks ago when he said, we're the best team in Canada. You better talk about us more. You better give us love. We're the ones going for the three-peat as well in the Voyageurs Cup. However, Jordo, do you think that it's actually CS Saint-Laurent, semi-pro, League One Quebec side, that is this year's top Canadian soccer story, at least?
Hands down. Last year, sat with you lovely people. We covered the game. TSS Rovers beat Valor. Didn't think that was going to happen so soon. I said, you'll see this happening down the road. So down the road in Jordan Wilson's terms is 3-4 years.
That was a
Somewhat
short road
later,
we were
where-
on. We were on a
Yeah,
path.
where I'm saying, where I'm starting to get some salts in the beard. You know, that was just a little bit down when I'm pushing 40. Those times, I did not think, the beautiful Andy Petrillo, that the next year we would see a better story. Like, CS Saint Laurent, there was a handsome fellow with a lot of melanin in his skin, nice smile, that backed this team from the beginning. And there's a lot of people telling me that I was crazy. What was I smoking? I digress. I backed this team. I didn't even think that they would go do this. Go and play TFC the way that they did with bravery. They were fearless. This has to be the best story and probably the best story for a while. I hope there's a team that can go and trump this. I just don't see it happening. To go to Halifax Wanderers, to go to Wanderers ground and be the better side and play with confidence for 90 plus minutes, to go to Pens and have composure and win. Then to play here as well, a packed out stadium. And play, you're playing a huge team, a huge side. Bernadeschi made an appearance yesterday, and these guys just kept going and going. And 3-0 is not really a fair representation of the work that they put in. Obviously, the 3 goals that were scored from TFC, they deserved them. But in terms of a team that just never gave up and kept, look at this, 87th minute, still putting in a shift. This has got to be the story for the ages. People are going to talk about this for decades to come.
Yeah, I mean it's great, and we can go through that entire game, Ollie, and just even look at it. DeAndre Kerr's goals, should that have counted? It's just those final touches in the final third. Little bit of a brain fart from Maniatis, the goalkeeper, who was absolutely exceptional on that Bernadeschi goal. But there's just so much to like about the tenacity of this team.
There is, for sure. I feel like I'm going to rain on the parade now. Like, there's just to answer the question. There's a lot of good Canadian soccer stories right now. So is it the absolute best one? Like Alphonso Davies scored in the Champions League semi-final yesterday. Like we're going to Copa America and Olympic Games this summer. Like there's a lot of competition in that front. But in terms of domestic club football, yeah, for sure, this the best story of the year so far. And I'd be shocked if there's not people at CPL HQ looking at that and saying we need a piece of that. Like this is a club that looks ready to be a professional team in terms of the crowds they're getting, the support they got, some of the players that look like they're at the level for sure, the media interest that was in that game. You know, John Herdman said he got more media in his press conference after the game than he normally gets in Toronto for MLS games. So I think there's a lot to like about CS Saint-Laurent and the whole environment that we saw last night. It was really, really fun to watch with the supporters groups, the young fans before the game, giving the TFC players high fives. This is what we're trying to build in this country. And I really hope that can be the springboard for something bigger for that club in particular, because they've clearly got something special going.
Wheels?
Sorry, I'm having gremlins. Like do you see my screen's just like turning off here? I don't know what's going on. Something
more than Frank Lampard. They're in the midfield, like scanning.
Something is going on in this house right now, and I don't like it.
Blink twice if you need help.
Yeah, you okay?
I don't know. The gremlins are out. This is crazy. Let's use John Herdman's own words when he said that it was a hellish atmosphere last night and a proper cup tie. And all he, is right to a certain degree is that there's going to be significant Canadian soccer stories this year, but one that means more for the foundation, the fabric, the growth, the acknowledgement of what we are as a footballing nation. This is it. This is number one. Like the fans that came out to that game, by the way, didn't even have a full week, 6 days between they knew that they were going to go on to play Toronto FC from the time that they actually go on and play them. So very little turnaround, and the fans came out. I think everyone in this country knows what a great soccer market Montreal is. Dare I say it, probably the best in this country. Like in terms of like grassroots, like people that are invested in this game. It's their number one sport. Like it's a phenomenal market. And none of this surprises me. But the way that the team played on the field with Brave, I think they had 16 shots last night, Andy. They like I honestly feel like it was like fitness that hurt them in the end. Mental fatigue, physical fatigue. That's where there's a massive gap between the resources, the time that they've been playing this season, and where the players are at right now. And there's no surprise to me that as the game wore on, it became more difficult for them to keep their focus in difficult times. People will point to the handball that wasn't given in the box. We kind of went through it on the post-match show. I understand why the referee didn't call it a handball. It's more about proximity. The ball did come off Coelho and then up it hit Mabika. So I think that can be explained in multiple ways. And you can stand on either side of the equation, whether you thought it should be a penalty or not. I get both arguments here. But at the end of the day, like the way that they played, they've provided a nice framework. Like TSS Rovers laid it down last year, and I feel like TSS Rovers built on it. And even Simcoe County Rovers added to it with 2,000 traveling fans to go down to BMO Field to see their team play. League One is stepping up across this country. It's becoming more professional just in terms of the way that it's presented and organized. That's going to have a big time knock-on effect. So pay attention, Canada, what's going on at the grassroots local level, because oftentimes more of that reflects the way things actually are in Canadian soccer than what is like publicized or what is put out there through the big market. So it's wonderful to see it. It's awesome. And kudos to everyone involved in Montreal.
2 weeks' time, be sure to tune into One Soccer for the second leg of the quarterfinals of the TELUS Canadian Championship. Let's get now to the Visa Women's Soccer Report. Let's give a shout out to former Canadian goalkeeper Steph Labbe. A documentary on her has come out called Shutout. And this is her being very open and honest, putting it all on the line, gentlemen, chronicling how, you know, even those who appear to be untouchable can be mental health. She talks about Alberta going all the way to Olympic gold. I had the honor of speaking in this documentary and just, you know, getting to know Steph Labbe over the years and her being open and honest. And, you know, I know we've chronicled this even a little bit about heading into those Olympics in Tokyo, but she was the backup. And, you know, she touches on the struggles of learning that she has to be the backup. Obviously, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. makes an appearance in this. If you remember, guys, he wanted to sign her. That's how good she was and how much he believed in her. And gender, he was told, no, sorry, no girls allowed. So Tommy Wheeldon Jr. speaks in this as well, and he's a huge fan of her. And so Steph Labbe fighting through, you know, gender bias, but also fighting through the fact that you've been told you're the number one your whole life, and now you're the number two. And then something happens right before the Olympics where she proves to Bev Priestman she can be the number one. And we all know what she did in Tokyo, guys. So this is on TELUS Originals. You know what else is on TELUS? One Soccer. But this documentary is on TELUS Originals. Be sure to give it a watch. And I think it's special, guys, right? Because we all know this. I mean, we talk about the athletes, but, you know, they're people, right? There's somebody's daughter, son, husband, wife. And I think sometimes that can be forgotten, the struggles that they go through, because there's this perception of a glamorous life. So anyways, a big shout out to Steph Labbe. That is on TELUS Originals. The documentary is called Shutout.